The crash landing. On a distant planet named Elysia, the sun shone brightly over lush green fields and vibrant flowers. The sky was a deep blue, dotted with fluffy clouds that floated lazily by. Elysia was home to a peaceful race of aliens known as the Elysians. They were gentle beings with smooth green skin and large, expressive eyes. They lived in harmony with nature, cultivating beautiful gardens and nurturing their connection to the land. One day, as the Elysians went about their daily routines, a loud noise broke the tranquil atmosphere. The ground shook slightly, and the sky was lit up by a fiery streak. An Earth spaceship was crashing down through the atmosphere. Inside the ship was Jake, a human pilot. He had been on a routine mission, exploring the galaxy for new worlds, when a sudden engine failure sent him hurtling towards Elysia. Jake struggled to control the ship as it spiraled toward the surface. He fought against the panic rising in his chest. "Hold it together," he muttered to himself. "You've trained for this." But nothing could prepare him for the chaos of the crash. The ship hit the ground with a loud thud, sending up clouds of dirt and debris. Jake's world turned dark as the impact knocked him unconscious. Hours later, Jake opened his eyes to a blinding light. He groaned and tried to sit up, but pain shot through his body. He looked around, realizing he was no longer in the cockpit of his ship. Instead, he lay on a soft bed made of leaves and flowers in a small, cozy hut. The walls were made of intertwined branches, and the air smelled sweet and fresh. "Where am I?" Jake wondered aloud, confusion filling his mind. Just then, a soft voice broke through his thoughts. "Don't move too much. You are hurt," said a gentle figure. Jake turned his head to see a beautiful alien girl standing beside him. Her skin was a light shade of green, and her eyes sparkled like emeralds. She wore a flowing dress made from leaves, and her long hair flowed like vines down her back. "Who are you?" Jake asked, his voice raspy. "I am Lyra," she replied, kneeling beside him. "You crashed in our land. We found you and brought you here to heal." Jake blinked, trying to comprehend her words. "Thank you," he said, feeling a mix of gratitude and confusion. He tried to sit up again, but the pain in his side made him wince. "You need rest," Lyra insisted, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Your body is injured, but you will be okay. We will take care of you." As Jake lay back down, he observed his surroundings. He noticed other Elysians outside, moving about their daily lives. They seemed curious yet cautious, glancing in his direction as they whispered among themselves. Jake felt like an outsider in a strange world. "What happened to my ship?" he asked Lyra. "It is broken," she explained, her tone serious. "But our people are skilled in many things. We will help you fix it. You can stay here as long as you need." Jake nodded slowly. He felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps he could repair his ship and return home. But a nagging thought remained in the back of his mind. How would he communicate with these aliens? They spoke a different language, and Jake struggled to understand. Seeing his confusion, Lyra smiled gently. "I can teach you our language," she offered. "And you can teach me yours. We can learn from each other." Jake felt a warmth in his heart. Despite being injured and stranded, the kindness of this alien girl filled him with a sense of comfort. "That would be great," he replied, managing a smile. Days passed, and as Jake healed, he and Lyra spent more time together. They communicated through gestures and drawings, sharing stories of their lives. Jake learned that Lyra was an explorer of her own kind, curious about the universe beyond Elysia. "I have always dreamed of seeing other worlds," she said one day, her eyes shining with excitement. "When I heard your ship crash, I hoped to meet you." "I'm glad you did," Jake replied, feeling a connection forming between them. They laughed and shared stories, building a friendship that transcended their differences. As Jake grew stronger, he began to help the Elysians with their daily tasks. He marveled at their way of life, so different from his own. They respected nature, living off the land without harming it. Jake admired their connection to the earth and vowed to learn more. One evening, as the sun set over Elysia, casting a golden glow on everything, Jake and Lyra stood outside, gazing at the stars. "Do you think I will ever go home?" Jake asked, feeling a twinge of sadness. Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of compassion. "Home is where your heart is," she said softly. "Maybe you can find a new home here, with us." Jake felt a flutter in his chest at her words. Could he really find a place here? As they stood together under the vast sky, he began to wonder what the future might hold for him and Lyra on this beautiful alien planet. With hope in his heart, Jake realized that his crash landing had led him to something he never expected, a new beginning. Understanding each other. Jake woke to the gentle sounds of birds chirping and the warm sunlight streaming through the leafy roof of his makeshift bed. He stretched and felt a little stronger today. The pain in his side had lessened, and he was eager to explore more of Elysia. After the crash landing, he had spent time healing, learning the alien language from Lyra, and discovering their ways. "Good morning, Jake." Lyra greeted him with a bright smile as she entered the hut. Her presence was like a ray of sunshine, and Jake couldn't help but smile back. "Good morning, Lyra. I feel better today," he replied, his voice clearer than before. "Today we will explore more of Elysia," she said, clapping her hands in excitement. "You will see how we live and what we do." Jake nodded eagerly. He was curious to see more of this vibrant world and the Elysians' way of life. After quickly eating a breakfast of fresh fruits and leaves, Jake and Lyra set out together. As they walked through the village, Jake admired the unique architecture of the Elysians' homes. They were built into the trees, with open spaces and natural materials. Everything seemed to blend harmoniously with the surroundings. Children played nearby, their laughter ringing out like music. Jake couldn't help but feel a sense of joy. It reminded him of simpler times on Earth. "Is it always this peaceful here?" he asked Lyra, wanting to understand more about her world. "Yes," she replied, her expression thoughtful. "We live in balance with nature. We believe in protecting our home and each other. We do not have wars or conflict like you may have on your planet." Jake felt a pang of sadness at her words. He knew too well the struggles humanity faced, the wars fought over resources, and the loss it brought. "I wish Earth could be like this," he said softly. Lyra turned to him, her eyes reflecting understanding. "Maybe it can be if you share what you have learned here." Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group of Elysians, gathering around them with curiosity. They smiled at Jake, eager to learn about their new friend. Lyra introduced him, explaining how he had come from another world. "Jake, this is my family," she said, pointing to a tall Elysian with flowing hair, who nodded in greeting. "And this is my little brother, Kellen." Kellen was a small, energetic boy who stared up at Jake with wide eyes. "Are you a hero?" Kellen asked, his voice full of wonder. Jake chuckled, not sure how to respond. "I'm just a pilot, but I'm glad to be here." Lyra's family welcomed him warmly, and they all gathered to share stories. Jake felt a growing bond with them, despite the language barrier. They communicated through laughter, gestures, and shared meals. As they ate, Jake discovered a dish made from nuts and fruits, which tasted surprisingly delicious. After the meal, Lyra took Jake to the heart of their village, where they cultivated their gardens. The fields were filled with colorful plants and strange fruits, all thriving in the rich soil. "We grow our food with care," Lyra explained. "We talk to the plants and listen to their needs." Jake was amazed. "You talk to plants? That's incredible." "Yes," Lyra laughed. "We believe that everything has a voice. It helps us connect with nature." As they tended to the gardens, Jake helped plant seeds alongside the Elysians. They showed him how to care for the plants, teaching him their methods. Jake realized that he was learning not just about farming, but about a different way of life. While working in the garden, Jake felt a sense of peace wash over him. For the first time since the crash, he began to forget about his old life on Earth and the troubles it held. After a long day of work, they sat beneath the shade of a large tree, tired but happy. "Thank you for teaching me so much," Jake said, looking at Lyra. "I never thought I would learn this in a place like this." Lyra smiled softly. "You are a good learner, Jake. You are part of our family now." As the sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the village, Jake and Lyra shared their dreams and hopes. Jake spoke of wanting to explore the stars again, to visit other worlds, while Lyra expressed her desire to learn about the universe beyond Elysia. "Maybe one day you can show me your Earth," she said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Jake nodded, feeling a deep connection growing between them. "And maybe I can take you on an adventure through the stars," he replied. As night fell, they gazed at the sky, filled with shimmering stars. In that moment, Jake realized that his crash landing had brought him more than just survival. It had opened a door to a new life filled with friendship, hope, and the promise of love. With a heart full of dreams, Jake knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, he would face them alongside Lyra and her family. Together, they could create a future that blended their worlds, a future filled with understanding and kindness. And so, under the vast, starry sky of Elysia, a new journey began, one that would change their lives forever. The growing connection. The next few days passed in a blur of excitement and learning. Jake and Lyra spent every moment together, deepening their friendship. Jake felt grateful to be part of Lyra's world, and as he adapted to Elysia, he also found a sense of purpose. One morning, while sitting together on the edge of a lush green meadow, Jake noticed Lyra gazing thoughtfully at the distant mountains. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity. "What is it like to fly among the stars?" she asked, turning to him. Jake smiled at the question. "It's amazing, Lyra. The stars are like little diamonds scattered across a dark ocean. Sometimes, it feels like I'm swimming through the universe." Lyra's eyes widened in wonder. "Do you think I could ever see the stars from your world?" "I believe you could," he replied. "If we find a way to repair my ship, I'd love to take you with me." As they shared their dreams, Jake felt a warmth growing between them, a connection that went beyond friendship. Lyra was not just an alien girl. She was his companion in a world full of wonder. One evening, as they walked through the glowing forest, Jake noticed how the bioluminescent plants lit up the path. "This place is so beautiful," he remarked, feeling grateful for the magic of Elysia. "It is beautiful, but it is even more beautiful with you here," Lyra said softly, her gaze steady on him. Jake's heart raced. He had never felt this way about anyone before. "Thank you, Lyra. You make me feel welcome here." As the days turned into weeks, Jake learned more about the Elysians' way of life. They celebrated the beauty of nature, honored their ancestors, and worked together to ensure their village thrived. He admired their unity, especially during the festivals where everyone danced and sang under the stars. One night, while preparing for a festival, Lyra asked Jake to join her in a traditional dance. He felt nervous but excited. The Elysians moved gracefully, their bodies flowing in harmony with the music. Jake tried his best to keep up, laughing at himself when he stumbled. "You're doing great," Lyra encouraged, her eyes shining with joy. Despite his clumsiness, Jake felt a sense of freedom and happiness. As they danced, he caught glimpses of the other villagers enjoying the moment. In that joyful atmosphere, Jake realized how lucky he was to have found a new home. Later, as the festival reached its peak, Jake found himself sitting with Lyra on a hill, overlooking the vibrant lights of the village. The stars twinkled above, mirroring the twinkling lights below. "I've never seen anything like this," he said, breathless from the beauty surrounding them. "It's a night to remember," Lyra replied, leaning closer. "Just like you." Jake turned to her, his heart pounding. "Lyra, I—" Before he could finish, she gently placed a finger on his lips. "I know," she whispered. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the world around them faded away. Jake felt as if the universe had conspired to bring them together. He leaned in, and Lyra met him halfway. Their lips touched softly, and the world erupted in colors and sounds. It was a simple kiss, but it held all the promises of their journey together. They pulled away, both blushing and smiling, feeling a warmth that melted away the differences between their worlds. As the festival continued, Jake felt a newfound sense of belonging. With Lyra by his side, he was not just a pilot from Earth. He was part of something bigger, a story that intertwined two lives across galaxies. Days turned into weeks, and their bond grew stronger. Jake shared tales of Earth, its wonders and its flaws, while Lyra taught him more about Elysian culture, their beliefs, and their connection to nature. However, the peace was fragile. Rumors began to spread in the village about an approaching danger. Some spoke of dark ships seen on the horizon, their shadows creeping closer to Elysia. The village elders held meetings, and Jake could sense the tension in the air. One night, as he sat with Lyra, he noticed her looking worried. "What's wrong?" he asked, concerned. "The elders are discussing the threat," she replied, biting her lip. "They fear our way of life is in danger." Jake reached for her hand, feeling the weight of her concern. "We'll find a way to protect Elysia together." Lyra nodded, her expression softening. "Yes, together." In that moment, Jake realized that his journey was far from over. He had come to Elysia seeking refuge, but now he felt a duty to protect the world that had welcomed him with open arms. With Lyra by his side, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the stars shone brightly above, Jake promised himself to fight for the peace and love he had found on Elysia. Together, they would navigate the dangers of the universe and create a future where their worlds could coexist. Shadows of danger. As the days passed, the threat looming over Elysia grew more palpable. Dark ships had indeed been sighted, their forms gliding silently across the horizon, casting ominous shadows over the vibrant land. The once celebratory atmosphere of the village had shifted to one of unease and worry. Jake felt the change keenly. The villagers went about their daily lives, but the laughter had faded. Instead, hushed conversations filled the air. Whispers of fear echoed in the marketplace, and the joyful dances were replaced by solemn gatherings. The elders, once joyful and full of wisdom, now wore frowns etched with concern. One evening, as Jake and Lyra walked through the marketplace, they overheard two villagers speaking in low tones. "They say the invaders come for our resources. They want to drain Elysia of its life," one villager said, his voice trembling. Jake's heart sank. He turned to Lyra, who looked pale and troubled. "What will we do?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll have to prepare. We can't let them take your home," Jake replied, determination igniting within him. The next day, the village elders called a meeting. The atmosphere was heavy with tension as the villagers gathered in the central square. Jake stood beside Lyra, feeling a mixture of anxiety and purpose. The village leader, an elder with wise, weathered features, stood before them, raising a hand for silence. "We have confirmed the presence of hostile ships on our borders," he began, his voice steady but grim. "We must protect our home. Our ancestors have fought for this land, and we will not let it fall into the hands of the invaders." The crowd murmured, fear mingling with resolve. Jake felt a rush of adrenaline. He was an outsider, but he had skills that could help. He leaned closer to Lyra. "I can assist you. I know about combat, strategy. I can help organize a defense." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide. "But you're one person, Jake. We are outnumbered. I may be one, but I've been trained for this. If we unite our strengths, we can stand a chance," he replied, confidence brimming within him. Lyra hesitated but then nodded, her expression shifting from worry to determination. "If we work together, we can prepare our people. We will not stand by and let them take what is ours." After the meeting, Jake and Lyra gathered a group of villagers willing to help. They shared ideas, strategized defenses, and organized patrols. Jake was amazed at the villagers' willingness to fight for their home. despite the fear that loomed over them. As they worked, Jake began to train the villagers in basic combat techniques. He taught them how to use makeshift weapons, tools from their daily lives that could be turned into effective defenses. Under the moonlit sky, they practiced together, their laughter slowly returning as they embraced their strength. "Imagine we are all warriors," Jake said during one training session, demonstrating a defensive stance. "We fight not just for ourselves, but for our families and our future." Lyra watched him, admiration glowing in her eyes. "You inspire them, Jake. They believe in you." In the days leading up to the expected confrontation, tension mounted. Jake and Lyra shared quiet moments beneath the stars, comforting each other amidst the chaos. Their bond grew stronger as they faced uncertainty together. One night, as they prepared for bed, Lyra took Jake's hand. "Promise me something," she said softly. "Anything," he replied, meeting her gaze. "Promise me that no matter what happens, we will find a way to keep each other safe." Jake felt a surge of emotion. "I promise, Lyra. We will face this together." With that promise, they drifted into a restless sleep, each dreaming of a future free from fear. The day of reckoning arrived. The sun rose with a fierce brightness, casting golden rays over Elysia. But for Jake and the villagers, it felt like a day of reckoning. They took their positions, their hearts pounding in their chests, each warrior ready to defend their home. As the first dark ships came into view, a heavy silence fell over the village. The sound of the engines throbbed ominously in the air. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he gripped his makeshift weapon, but he pushed aside his fear. He glanced at Lyra, who stood firm beside him, her resolve shining through her apprehension. "They're coming," Jake whispered, steeling himself. The dark ships descended like vultures, their hulking forms blocking the sunlight. The villagers stood together, ready to face the unknown. As the ships landed, a heavy thud resonated across the ground. A hatch opened, revealing the invaders, strange beings clad in dark armor, their intentions clear. Fear rippled through the crowd, but Jake raised his voice, calling out to the villagers. "Stay together. Remember what we trained for. We fight for Elysia." The villagers rallied around him, hearts pounding with bravery. They positioned themselves, ready to protect their home, their hearts intertwined with a shared purpose. As the first of the invaders stepped forward, Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. He knew they would fight not just for survival, but for the hope of a brighter future, a future that included him and Lyra, side by side, against the encroaching shadows of the clash of forces. The tension in the air was electric as the dark ships landed. The villagers of Elysia stood their ground, hearts racing with a mixture of fear and determination. The shadows cast by the ships loomed over them like a storm threatening to unleash its fury. Jake felt the weight of the moment, knowing they were about to face an enemy intent on taking their home. As the hatch opened, a ramp extended, and the invaders emerged, clad in intimidating dark armor. They'd moved with a precision that sent shivers down Jake's spine. He could see their eyes, cold and calculating, as they scanned the villagers, assessing their numbers and resolve. The tension was palpable, the villagers holding their breath as they braced for the confrontation. Jake stepped forward, standing beside Lyra. He could feel her fear, but her determination was unwavering. "We fight together," he whispered, squeezing her hand. "No matter what happens, remember we are strong." The lead invader, towering and fierce, raised a weapon, its metallic surface gleaming menacingly in the sun. "Surrender now, and we will spare your lives," he shouted, his voice echoing across the square. The villagers exchanged glances, fear creeping into their expressions. But Jake stepped forward, his voice steady despite the pounding of his heart. "We will not surrender. Elysia is our home, and we will defend it." The invaders laughed, a harsh, mocking sound that cut through the tension. "Foolish mortals, you think you can stand against us. We are here to take what we want." In that moment, something shifted within Jake. The fear that had gripped him transformed into a fierce resolve. He glanced at the villagers, and he could see the flicker of bravery igniting in their eyes. Without warning, the lead invader lunged forward, swinging his weapon. Jake barely dodged, adrenaline surging through him as he retaliated with a swift strike of his own. The clash of metal echoed, and a fierce battle erupted around them. The villagers fought back with a determination they had never known. They wielded whatever they could find: tools, farming equipment, anything that could serve as a weapon. Jake fought alongside them, guiding and inspiring them as they pushed against the invaders. Lyra was by his side, her own makeshift weapon swinging with surprising accuracy. Together, they maneuvered through the chaos, their movements synchronized as they defended their home. Jake felt a surge of pride as he watched the villagers rally, fighting for their land and their future. The battle raged on, filled with chaos and shouts. The invaders were powerful, but the villagers had something they lacked: a fierce love for their home and each other. They fought with heart, their courage driving them forward even as the enemy pressed in. As the skirmish intensified, Jake saw a group of villagers struggling against a pair of invaders. Without thinking, he dashed towards them, fear forgotten in the heat of the moment. "Keep fighting. We're stronger together," he yelled, swinging his weapon with renewed vigor. With Jake's encouragement, the villagers rallied, pushing back against the invaders. They'd formed a tight circle, defending each other against the onslaught. The strength of their unity shone brightly, and Jake could feel the tide beginning to turn. Just then, a sudden explosion rocked the ground, sending debris flying. Jake stumbled but quickly regained his footing. He looked around in confusion, trying to locate the source of the explosion. Panic surged through him as he realized it was one of the dark ships, its systems malfunctioning, smoke pouring from its hull. "Look," one of the villagers shouted, pointing to the chaos erupting from the ship. "They're losing control." The invaders were thrown into disarray, and for a moment, it seemed as if hope might be within reach. Jake seized the opportunity, shouting to the villagers, "Now, let's push them back." With a renewed sense of purpose, the villagers surged forward, their collective strength fueling their resolve. The invaders, caught off guard, faltered, and for the first time, fear crossed their faces. Jake felt exhilaration as he led the charge, striking down an enemy with a determined swing. He glanced back at Lyra, her face lit with determination, as she fought fiercely. They were a team, their hearts aligned in this battle for survival. As the villagers pressed forward, they forced the invaders to retreat. The tide of the battle shifted, and with each step, Jake felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. Elysia was theirs to defend, and they were willing to fight for it, no matter the cost. But just when victory seemed within reach, the leader of the invaders, his fury evident, roared, "You will pay for this insolence." With a wave of his hand, he signaled for reinforcements. From the shadows, more dark ships descended, their engines roaring like thunder. Jake's heart sank as he realized the battle was far from over. "Fall back," he shouted, rallying the villagers to regroup. "We need to prepare for the next wave." As they retreated to the safety of the village, Jake could see the determination in their eyes. They had fought bravely, but now they faced an even greater challenge. He looked at Lyra, who stood beside him, her expression fierce yet resolute. "We won't give up," she said, her voice steady. "We will find a way to protect Elysia." Jake nodded, knowing that their battle was just beginning. Together, they would face whatever came next, fighting not only for their home, but for the love they had found amidst the chaos. The shadows of danger still loomed, but they were ready to face them head-on, united in their strength and determination. The heart of the battle. The days following the invasion were tense in Elysia. The villagers fortified their homes, reinforcing walls and creating barriers to protect against the dark ships hovering ominously in the sky. Jake felt the weight of responsibility heavy on his shoulders, knowing that their safety depended on his leadership. He and Lyra stood side by side, strategizing with the villagers to prepare for the inevitable second assault. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow over the village, Jake gathered the villagers in the square. They formed a tight circle, each person's face reflecting a mixture of fear and determination. "Listen," he began, his voice steady. "We've fought bravely before, and we can do it again. But this time, we need to be ready for anything. We have to be smart about our defense." Whispers of agreement rippled through the crowd, and Jake felt a surge of hope. He looked at Lyra, who stood close, her expression fierce. They were no longer just a group of frightened villagers. They were a united front, ready to face their enemies together. The following days were filled with preparation. The villagers fashioned makeshift weapons from whatever they could find. Shovels, pitchforks, and even farming tools became instruments of defense. Lyra took charge of training the women and children, teaching them how to use these tools with precision and effectiveness. She was a natural leader, her calm demeanor inspiring confidence in everyone around her. As night fell, Jake and Lyra continued their preparations. They had set up traps around the village, hidden pitfalls, and snares designed to slow down the invaders. They wanted to catch them off guard and make the most of their limited resources. Then, just as Jake finished securing a trap, a distant rumble filled the air. He looked up, and his heart dropped as dark clouds gathered ominously in the sky. The ships were returning. "Everyone, to your positions," Jake shouted, adrenaline surging through him. He could see the fear in the eyes of the villagers, but he also saw determination. They had faced the enemy before, and they were ready to do it again. As the ships descended, the villagers took their places, hearts racing. The shadows of the ships cast a dark pall over the village, a chilling reminder of the threat looming above them. Jake stood at the forefront, gripping his weapon tightly, determination etched on his face. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the air as the lead ship landed. The ramp lowered, and the invaders poured out, their armor glinting in the dim light. The villagers stood their ground, ready for battle. "Charge!" Jake yelled, his voice ringing with authority. The villagers surged forward, a wave of humanity clashing against the cold metal of the invaders. The fight was fierce, the sound of clashing metal and shouted commands filling the air. Jake fought valiantly, leading the charge. He struck down enemy after enemy, fueled by a fierce desire to protect his home and the people he loved. In the heat of battle, he caught a glimpse of Lyra, battling alongside him with a fierce determination. They moved as one, instinctively anticipating each other's actions, their bond strengthening with every strike. But the invaders were relentless. They pressed forward, their superior technology giving them an advantage. Jake felt a pang of despair as he saw some of the villagers falter under the onslaught. Just then, a blast of energy shot through the air, narrowly missing Jake's shoulder. He turned to see the lead invader, a grim smile on his face, preparing for another attack. With renewed determination, Jake fought back, pushing through the chaos. He dodged attacks, his heart pounding as he focused on the enemy leader. He had to take him down. In the midst of the battle, the invaders attempted to surround Jake. Sensing the danger, he called out to the villagers, "Stay together. We can't let them separate us." They rallied around him, forming a protective circle as they fought back against the encroaching enemy. Jake's breath came in ragged gasps as he engaged the enemy leader, their weapons clashing in a fierce duel. The lead invader was skilled, his movements fluid and practiced. But Jake fought with the strength of his love for Lyra and his determination to protect his home. He could feel the heat of the battle, the energy of the villagers fueling him. With a surge of strength, Jake disarmed the invader, sending his weapon flying. The enemy leader stumbled back, surprise flashing in his eyes. Jake seized the moment, charging forward and knocking the invader to the ground. The crowd erupted in cheers, their spirits lifted by the sight of their hero triumphing. But the battle was far from over. The remaining invaders were furious at the loss of their leader, and pushed harder against the villagers. Jake fought on, knowing that they could not let their guard down. They had to stay united, to fight together until the last breath. As the fight continued, Jake spotted Lyra across the battlefield, engaged in combat with another invader. She was holding her own, but Jake felt a jolt of fear as he saw her back against the wall, with two enemies closing in on her. He couldn't let anything happen to her. "Lyra," he shouted, breaking free from the combat surrounding him. He charged toward her, adrenaline coursing through his veins. With every step, he pushed through the chaos, determined to reach her before it was too late. Just as he reached her, he swung his weapon, taking down one of her attackers. The other turned, shocked to see Jake. He lunged, but Jake was quicker, using his momentum to deliver a powerful blow that sent the invader sprawling. "Are you okay?" Jake panted, looking into Lyra's eyes. She nodded, though her expression was still serious. "I'm fine. We have to keep fighting." They stood back to back, united in their resolve. The battle raged on around them, but they had each other, and together they were strong. As the fight continued, the tide began to turn. The villagers fought with renewed vigor, their spirits lifted by Jake and Lyra's bravery. They pressed the invaders back, their unity shining brightly in the darkness of battle. Finally, with one last push, the villagers overwhelmed the remaining invaders, forcing them to retreat. Cheers erupted from the villagers as they celebrated their hard-won victory. They had fought fiercely and held their ground, their love for their home fueling their strength. Jake turned to Lyra, who stood beside him, her face flushed with triumph. "We did it," he exclaimed, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We really did it." But even as they celebrated, Jake knew the battle was not yet over. The invaders had been defeated for now, but he could sense that they would return. The war for Elysia was far from finished, but with Lyra by his side, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Together, they would stand strong against the darkness, fighting not only for their home, but for the love that had blossomed amidst the chaos. A new dawn. The morning sun rose slowly over the village of Elysia, casting a warm glow on the land. Jake stood at the edge of the village, looking out at the horizon. After the fierce battle, the villagers had worked tirelessly to clean up the remnants of the fight. The air was still charged with the energy of victory, but there was a heaviness too. The loss of their fallen comrades weighed on their hearts. As the sun climbed higher, Jake felt a sense of hope rising within him. He turned back toward the village, where he could see Lyra helping the other villagers. Her determination and spirit had inspired everyone to work together, and now they were rebuilding not just their homes but their lives. He smiled, knowing that they had forged a bond that would withstand anything the universe threw at them. "Jake," Lyra called, waving him over. He walked toward her, heart racing at the sight of her radiant smile. "Come help us with this." Jake joined her, lifting debris alongside the other villagers. As they worked, Lyra shared stories of their victory, recounting how they had fought bravely and fiercely. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and camaraderie, a stark contrast to the chaos of the previous days. After hours of hard work, the villagers gathered in the square for a meeting. Jake stood at the forefront, his heart pounding. He looked around at the faces of the people he had come to love and respect. "Thank you all for your bravery and hard work," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "Together, we have overcome something unimaginable. We fought not just for our homes, but for each other." The villagers erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the square. Jake continued, "But we must prepare for the possibility that the invaders will return. We need to stay strong, united as one. They may have retreated for now, but we cannot let our guard down." Lyra stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "We can fortify our defenses and continue training together. Each one of us has a role to play, and together we are unstoppable. We must not forget what we've lost, but we can honor them by ensuring our home remains safe." The villagers nodded in agreement, their spirits high. They were ready to take action, to strengthen their village and protect what they held dear. Days turned into weeks as the villagers worked tirelessly. They built stronger walls, created lookout posts, and set up training sessions for everyone. Jake and Lyra often led the training, teaching the villagers how to defend themselves effectively. It became a ritual. They gathered every evening to practice, laughter mingling with the sounds of clashing weapons. As Jake spent more time with Lyra, he felt their connection deepening. It was as if the hardships they faced had drawn them closer, weaving their lives together in a way that felt destined. They shared stories under the stars, dreams for the future, and plans for what their lives could be beyond the fight. One evening, as they sat on a hill overlooking the village, Jake turned to Lyra, his heart racing. "I can't imagine my life without you. You've become my strength, my reason to fight. No matter what happens, I want you by my side." Lyra looked at him, her eyes bright with understanding. "You're my hero, Jake. Together, we can face anything. I believe in us." Their hands intertwined, a symbol of their unity. Just as the stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Jake felt a sense of peace wash over him. They were not just survivors. They were thriving, creating a life filled with hope and love amidst uncertainty. But in the shadows, danger loomed. The invaders were regrouping, plotting their return. As the villagers trained and fortified their defenses, the alien leader, the one Jake had defeated, was determined to reclaim his honor and exact revenge. He was gathering forces, preparing for a counterattack. One evening, as Jake and Lyra trained the villagers, a scout burst into the square, breathless and panicked. "They're coming. The invaders are regrouping, and they're on their way back." A chill swept through the crowd, the laughter and camaraderie replaced by tension and fear. Jake felt a surge of determination as he looked at the frightened faces around him. "We will not back down. We fought once, and we can do it again. We will defend our home." Lyra stepped forward, her voice unwavering. "Together, we will stand strong. We will protect each other and our home. They may have more weapons, but they do not have our spirit." The villagers rallied, fear transforming into a fierce resolve. They knew what they were fighting for: their home, their families, and each other. As night fell, Jake and Lyra gathered the villagers in the square once more. "Tonight, we prepare," Jake said, his voice steady. "We will defend Elysia with everything we have. We know our strengths, and we will use them." The villagers moved with purpose, gathering weapons and securing their defenses. Jake and Lyra stood at the forefront, rallying their people. They were ready to face whatever darkness lay ahead. Together, they would fight to protect their newfound family, their home, and the love that had blossomed amidst the chaos. With the stars shining above them, Jake felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was their fight, and they would face it as one. No matter what challenges awaited them, they would stand together, united in their strength and love. The dawn of a new battle was approaching, but so was the promise of a future filled with hope and resilience.